Edward Carpenter writes on page 17 and 18 of Pagan and Christian Creeds that Virgin Mary is just a character based on the constellation Virgo, known as the Virgin or the House of Bread. However, former astrologer and author of Spellbound, The Paranormal Seduction of Today's Kids, Marcia Montenegro wrote, "You can't just make a story out of names like Virgo, Leo, Taurus, etc. And why doesn't the story begin with Aries? If it did, then Leo comes before Virgo, yet Leo is supposedly Jesus, the Lion of Judah. It seems it would come after Virgo, not before, in a story." Bethlehem indeed means house of bread. Nevertheless, there is no basis for concluding that Bethlehem was a fictitious place which was fabricated based upon the constellation Virgo. The existence of Bethlehem is attested by biblical and extra-biblical sources. First, the Old Testament authors prior to the 1st century mention Bethlehem. The Jewish historian Josephus mentions Bethlehem as the location where King David was anointed to be future king of Israel. Josephus recorded, "And when Samuel mourned for him King Saul, God bid him leave off his concern for him, and to take the holy oil and go to Bethlehem, to Jesse the son of Obed, and to anoint such of his sons as he should show him for their future king." J.B. Hennessy reports of the archaeological evidence demonstrating that Bethlehem was inhabited during the Iron Age and in the 1st century. He recorded, "Perhaps the most important has been the isolation, in 1969, of the Iron Age tell. The limits of the Iron Age occupation, while not entirely clear, appear to be on the flat surface and the slopes immediately beneath the basilica and to the east, alleging that Jesus is just a symbolic representation of the sun, a solar deity, and that his 12 disciples were representations of the zodiac. Author and skeptic Acharya S. states that the sun followers, or disciples, are the 12 signs of the zodiac through which the sun must pass. How exactly did Jesus pass through his disciples? How do the zodiac signs follow the sun? They don't. In Exodus chapter 32, we read that Aaron and the Israelites made an idol of a golden calf and worshipped it. Moses then came down from the mount with the 10 Commandments on 2 tablets and shattered the tablets after seeing the Israelites' idolatry. Moses then took the calf and burnt it in the fire. The Christ conspirators will suggest that the golden calf is Taurus the bull, and Moses represents the new age of Aries the ram. They say that Moses represents the ram, and this is why Jews blow the ram's horn today. Yet Moses is never recorded blowing any ram's horn, and Moses cannot be identified as a ram by any interpretation within or without Scripture. Yet another attempt to throw astrological allegories upon biblical reality are the claims that Jesus ushers in the age of Aquarius. In Luke chapter 22, verse 10, Jesus tells his disciples to enter into the city where they will meet a man bearing a pitcher of water. Acharya S. claims this is symbolic of Jesus, or the supposed solar personification of Pisces, ushering in the age of Aquarius, or the water bearer. She also claims Jesus was baptized in Aquarius, the water bearer, hinting that Jesus will bring in the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius begins around AD 2150. Acharya S. then claims that Jesus becomes the Good Shepherd and the Lamb in Aries, the Ram. Aries is from about 2150 BC to AD 1 and has nothing to do with Jesus. Additionally, a lamb does not resemble a ram, and neither a ram nor a lamb is a shepherd. She goes on to state that Jesus told the parables of the sowing and tilling in the fields in Taurus the bull. For anybody who studies the Scriptures, it's easy to see why this argument is a fallacy. Jesus told parables in several agricultural metaphors, including fig trees, wheat and tares, sheep and goats, seeds, and many others. But where is the sign for these parables? Critics also claim that because Jesus' disciples, James and John, were fishermen, they symbolized two fish, which also happens to be the symbol for the age of Pisces in which Jesus was born. Are we seeing a pattern? To these critics like Acest, any mention of bulls is automatically accredited to the age of Taurus, any mention of fish to the age of Pisces, and any mention of water to the age of Aquarius, even though these analogous claims make little to no sense. Indeed, two disciples were fishermen, but Matthew was a tax collector, Simon was a zealot, Luke was a physician and a historian, Paul was a Pharisee and a tent maker. What is their significance to astrology? Indeed, Jesus fed 5,000 people with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. Later, he fed 4,000 people with a few fish, or more fish than 2 fish, and 7 loaves of bread. So what? He also healed people, gave sight to the blind, raised the dead, walked on water, and cast demons out of people. But there is no astrological symbols accompanying these miracles. Besides, fish and fishermen are also mentioned in the Old Testament, which predates Jesus and was prior to the age of Pisces. Furthermore, the New Testament, written after the age of Taurus the bull, also mentions calves. It's easy to see how these unsound arguments can be made wherever it seems convenient to these skeptics. Obviously, Bible stories abound with fish because fish were the most common source of protein near the Sea of Galilee. New Testament stories also refer to rooster, doves, donkeys, birds, camels, sheep, and goats, yet none of these animals would normally fall under the age of Pisces. What did Jesus mean in Matthew 28:20 when he said, "I am with you always, even unto the end of the world"? The word world in the King James Bible is translated to eon in the Greek, or age. This word means forever, an unbroken age, perpetuity of time, or eternity. Jesus was not referring to an astrological age like Aquarius or Pisces. He was referring to the end of the world, or the end of the perpetuity of time as we know it. The Greek word eon was used again by Jesus in reference to the end of the world in Matthew 13:39, when he said, "The harvest is the end of the world," or eon, and the reapers are the angels. In Luke 1:70, Jesus refers to God's holy prophets which have been since the world, or eon, began. God's prophets, such as Moses, did not live in the astrological age of Pisces as Jesus, yet Jesus includes them in this passage. It is obvious Jesus is not referring to an astrological age. Paul stated in Romans 12:2, "Do not be conformed to this world, or eon, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Again, he is referring to this world, or perpetuity of time since the world began until it ends. And in 1 John 2:17, John wrote, "The world, or eon, passes away, and the lust thereof, but he that does the will of God abides forever." It is absurd to assume that either the writers of the Old Testament or the New Testament based their writings on astrology. In fact, God specifically condemned astrology through his prophet Isaiah. "You are wearied with your many counsels. Let now the astrologers, those who prophesy by the stars, those who predict by the new moons, stand up and save you from what will come upon you. Behold, they have become like stubble. Fire burns them. They cannot deliver themselves from the power of the flame." God also specifically condemned worship of the sun and the moon through his prophet Moses. The claim that Christianity borrowed the idea of the 3 kings from ancient religions is also poorly researched, just as the same misinformed idea that appears on Christmas cards. This is not found anywhere in the Bible. In the book, The Christ Conspiracy, Acest wrote that the birth sequence of Jesus is astrological citing that Sirius, the brightest star in the east, aligns with the 3 brightest stars, or 3 kings, in Orion's belt on December 24th. The Bible simply states in Matthew 2:1, "Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem." The wise men were not kings, and nowhere does it say in the scriptures that the wise men were 3 in number. This is purely legend and not a biblical claim.